Our next person is going to be Manumohan, and he's going to speak to you about his books and the journey he made to the conclusion of publishing his book.
Hello, my name is Manas, and as Monty Uncle nicely explained, I have written a book called Broken Manacles. Now, before I start this speech, I'd like to point out that before I finish this, I'd like at least one of you to have taken back something from what I've told you and the reasons for why I've become a writer. All right, so let's begin. So, first I'd like to talk about stereotyping and things in our community that we deem as normal. So, just to ask the audience, in terms of professions that you guys do in the future, what do parents normally go for, like types of subjects? Anyone? Yes? All right, yeah, fair enough. So it's those type of subjects that revolve around technicality and often lead to higher institutions like medical school or teaching as a professor at a university. And for me, what I'm trying to tell you guys is that people in our community, and I have to widen the scope of what our community is, because as much as we can call ourselves a community in the sense that we are a South Indian community, we can also widen the scope to just as a continent, as an Asian community, and that is a common stigma that's attached to our community, and that's what is expected of us. So what I'm trying to put across is that when people are pressured to do those kind of subjects, they end up not living their life to the fullest capacity of happiness because they feel that they can do better in something else, but they choose to do it in those subjects due to the pressure that's been put on them. So that's why I became a writer, because in my mind, what I thoroughly believe is that if you're good at something, there will always be success there. So now I'll move on to my book and why I wrote it. So my book is called Broken Manacles, and this is where I start to give a critique on race. And the book revolves around a runaway slave in the 1600s that managed to escape imprisonment and escapes to the coast of Nigeria, where the slave trade would normally be active, and the tragedy that happens to him and the social injustice. But the reason I wrote in that time period is that I wanted to show the similarities between racial injustice then and racial injustice now, because I feel like as a society we haven't changed that much. Obviously back then, with the black community, what was considered of them is that they had to be slaves or housemaids or whatnot, and had to be married off to, not even married off to, they were essentially possessions. And that was the racial injustice that was done to them. And what I'm trying to prove here is that for me, I feel like the same racial injustice that used to be done then, what was expected of them, all of that, is kind of reminiscent in our society now. Not obviously in a literal sense, but I feel like things are still expected of us that we don't want to essentially do. So let's look at the racial injustice that occurs in my book. For example, the main character is under the name of Karnak, and his best friend in the book is a white man who happened to be, well, at the start of the book was his enemy, but as they managed to unravel societal expectations back then, they realized that they weren't that different as people. That's why they ended up becoming friends. And I wanted to explore that idea of race and stereotyping and all of that stuff in my book. And then I wanted people to read it, because if you can relate to that book, if you can relate to situations in that book, that means there's clearly something in society, in our community, that clearly isn't right or needs to be fixed. So now let's look at our society. Obviously, there has been racial movements and whatnot, and I feel like literature has given a outlet to explore issues like this. So if you read books about crime, and you read books about how you look at the murder victim in a crime genre book, it can be of an ethnic minority, it can be of white, you can see that there has been changes in literature. It's not same. And what I really like about literature is how no one writes the same book. If you have a genre, people will like to twist that genre. So if you look at people, let's look at Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. When she wrote that book, firstly she was a woman, and back then writers were predominantly male. So firstly she's already broken that stereotype. She had to write under a pen name so that people would think that she was a male when she wrote that book, so that she wouldn't get any bad press or whatnot. The book itself was a love story, but it had a sinister side to it. Essentially, the main character was called Mr. Rochester. He marries a woman in Jamaica and then realizes he doesn't like that woman. So when he brings her back to England, he locks her in the attic of his mansion for 10 years. And during that time, he's visiting other women. One of the women, which is Jane Eyre. Then, during the marriage ceremony, she finds out that this woman is locked up. They go to the attic, they meet this mad woman. And this woman sets the house on fire. And it's like, what I like about that is that she converted what was supposed to be a love story into something different, and looking at issues in that society where let's look at marriage. People would marry for dowry for a certain price. That was essentially what it is. Nowadays it's more about love. So she wanted to point out that he married her, he didn't love her, but he got £30,000 off it. Mr. Rochester did. So that's why I like literature. It gives an opportunity to give a normal reader or a normal person a different outlook on something, and it's never repeated over and over and over and over again. And that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to be able to write a book that someone once just opens that book and reads, and once they finish that book, they have a different outlook on issues in our society or in our community or anything, and be like, you know what, he's right. He has talked about this issue, and he has made a valid point, and I want to change who I am as a result of that. I want to change my outlook on life. And if I can make at least one person do that from reading my books, I feel like I would have succeeded as an author or as a writer. When I first, what prompted me to write a book was that I had all these ideas in my mind. I'm sure a lot of you guys here, after watching, I don't know, like an action movie or something in your mind, you think of like an alternate ending, or you think of like, oh, what if the character had done this? What if the character had done that? What if he talked to that girl? What if he talked to that guy? And your mind starts to spiral and make all these alternate realities in your mind of what that movie or that book could have been. What could have made it better? Movie critics do it all the time. Books give you the scope to do that. Essentially, that's why I'm doing it. It gives you the option to change what a plot would be. It gives you the opportunity to say what you want. And the beauty of it is that it's an ageless thing. You don't have to be a certain age to write. You can be 5 years old or you can be 90. Writing is ageless. It's an ageless talent, and it's an ageless profession. And the good thing about books is, even though books aren't as common anymore, people are still reading them. If you look at the large demographic of people that read books, especially in our community, there are a lot of people that read books, especially in the Indian community. You always find someone's dad with like at least one book in their drawer somewhere. And that's the good thing, because when they read that book, they have a different outlook on their life. So bringing this back to my initial point about doing what you want, I feel like this doesn't just apply to writing. Writing is what I want to do. That's my thing, and I've justified why I wanted to do it. But for me, I feel like because of this stigma and this need in our community, and I don't mean the Malayali community, I mean just the Asian community in general, because of the stigma that's attached to having to, how should I put it, to do certain professions, to box yourself within certain options, that's what's going to make you not enjoy life. Because you feel like when you finish that course and put yourself through that, that you're going to enjoy your life. But I feel like if you're doing a subject you like, you'll always be the best in that. When you get that job, you'll always be better than someone who didn't want to do that. Let's say you were an art or an English enthusiast like myself, but let's say your family insisted that engineering or accounting was a better place to go to. It was a better path to go to financially. I would say that when you go down that path, when you listen to your parents and go down that path, you will get those qualifications, I have no doubt. But I don't feel like that individual would be living their life to its fullest capacity. They would not be enjoying their life to its fullest capacity. So that's what I feel like. If anything, just as I chose writing, and I chose writing books, which is not something that is a normal career path that someone would want to go for, that's what I felt like I want to do. I realized to let go of this stigma and to do what I want. Because I know in the future, if I ever become a famous author, it's because I'm the best at what I did. Because I'm always writing books. I'm doing what I love. If I wanted to become a doctor, if I wanted to be an author and then I became a doctor, I will not be the best at being a doctor. I won't have that passion. I won't have that want to be a doctor. So therefore, there's always going to be that one person in that department that's going to be better than me, that's going to get paid more than me. That's why I feel like this isn't so much me talking about literature, it's me speaking about what people should do in terms of what they want. What they want to do, that's what people should do. Because at the end of the day, that's all you can do. Then we can talk about how in my book, Broken Manacles, towards the midsection, that's when there was a extract where I was going through the building of the relationship between Karnak and his best friend, which was a white man. And what was ironic about it was that at the start of this book, everyone hates this man, hates this white man that abused Karnak, abused this black man. And you see this, and I feel like that's a product of society back then. You see a different person, and that's not who he was, because by the end of it, when he lets go of that stigma, when he lets go of those societal pressures, when he lets go of all of that, he ends up being a different person. And I've received a lot of criticism from people for making the ending how it was, and how that person may or may not have had a tragic ending, that white man. So the fact that I can make someone from being hated to loved is me showing you that if you're doing something that you don't want to do, you will not be the best version of yourself. And being the best version of yourself is what living is all about. That's what you are here to do. That's what we're here to do. Because that's all we can be. Yeah, any question, guys?